much, Mirko. Our next guest is Felix Lutsch, Chief Commercial Officer at Chorus One, and he's going to speak about MEV being the final frontier of staking economics.
Hi everyone, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad I met Mirko in 2008. He's probably one of my first proof of stake contacts, so super happy that Staking Rewards came this far and put together the first kind of staking meetup that or like conference, let's say, that we've seen. So super excited to speak here. My name is Felix Lutsch. My title of the talk is MEV, the final frontier of staking economics. So I want to talk a little bit about how staking has worked in the past, give like a few basic overview of what we are actually doing here, and kind of how the token economics work and what role MEV might play in the future or is currently playing in that system. So maybe like a short 101 on staking. Basically, if you look at a proof of stake network, you have a few core parties, which are basically the users of the network that use the applications, obviously, and you have the validators who provide security and validation to the network, and the delegators, who are basically the token holders, providing the collateral for validators to call. So these are the basics. We're going to get into how it all works. Now, I mentioned MEV. What is actually MEV, right? Like, MEV stands for maximally extractable value. It's been kind of a recent phenomenon in the Ethereum space following the DeFi summer, and really it means like kind of opportunities that exist on the chain where value can be extracted by including, excluding, or changing the order of transactions in a block. So here are two examples. Let's say there's two decentralized exchanges on a network, and there is the same pair of tokens on both of them, and then there exists like imbalance between the prices. There is a chance to arbitrage these prices, and then basically that is an example of MEV. Or let's say a user is interacting with a DEX and provides his slippage tolerance. That can generate slippage and front running, because basically someone that sees the user's transaction might put in his own transaction before this user's transaction to push up the price, and then basically sell again after the user and essentially pocket a small profit. Now, this is kind of an extractive type of MEV that we want to avoid. I'll talk a bit about this. And then I guess in general, there's different parties that can capture this MEV. Historically, it's been very focused on the searchers or like kind of bot operators that do these things. I guess there is this framing that Flashbot's kind of established of the MEV dystopia and the MEV utopia, where really MEV has this potential to be very centralizing force that like only a few highly sophisticated parties like searchers or searcher validator vertically integrated companies could extract it. But the way we want to like work towards is having a utopia where basically the MEV revenues are redistributed to the participants in the network, which might be like the validators and the delegators, obviously kind of earning additional yield from MEV, but also like the network itself, maybe even the users or applications, and some new parties that come into existence through MEV, right? Like we have these block building marketplaces that might take a small cut, or even the front ends that essentially bring the user, that bring the order flow to the protocols could kind of profit a little bit from MEV. So, right, like talking a little bit about what solutions exist for MEV. There is a kind of status when you don't have any MEV solution where this creates negative externalities on your network. So basically, when you don't have a solution, the searchers or the bots kind of compete either on the fees. So there's this priority gas auction that basically they would bid up the fees to take a certain opportunity, and this higher fee level kind of impacts the rest of the users of the network, which are actually not really, maybe shouldn't be impacted by that. Or you can also have spam. If you don't have a fee market, like people will just spam to get the value, and that's obviously also not nice for the user because it can lead to the network going down, as we've seen a few times in the past years on some networks. And then like some solutions are emerging for these problems. Basically, one of them is the block building marketplace, kind of championed by Flashbots, but there's also other teams like Jido, Skip, Mechatech. I think the Skip guys are here, so you'll hear more about this later, where basically you have these bots that submit full bundles of transactions, like a lot of transactions in a bundle, and attach like a tip to it that the validator will receive for just including these transactions without actually looking at the transactions and what they are. And from this, you basically can avoid these negative externalities that I was talking about earlier. And, but this is kind of opt-in. So basically, you need validators to adopt these solutions. You need searchers to adopt them. It's a two-sided marketplace. And also, the marketplace will take some fees. So this is like some consequence of that. And we actually have a third potential solution, basically kind of building it into the protocol to take some MEV. This is quite interesting, where Ethereum has championed this with proposed a block builder separation, where essentially these roles of building the block and validating the block are completely separated in the future. And there's also some other work being done on the chain itself taking some of these opportunities. So kind of instead of people sending transactions, the chain will look every block, is there like some arbitrage somewhere on my network? Can I kind of rebalance these pools and then redistribute that to the users? We've done a little bit of work on this ourselves on Solana. So if you've been at Breakpoint, we've presented on our block building solution there that kind of goes in a similar direction. Now, I kind of mentioned there's also like malicious MEV, so like front running, these kind of extractive things that can happen on a network, where there are certain solutions for solving that. Some examples include like batch auctions. So CowSwap on Ethereum is, for example, a DEX that tries to minimize the negative front running by essentially batching together auctions and finding like one clearing price for all the transactions in a certain time range. Another solution is threshold encryption, where essentially you kind of hide the contents of a block until it's already committed to the chain, where you can then reveal them, and then there's no opportunity for the validators anymore to take profit from that. So this is like some research that Anoma and Osmosis are doing with Ferveo, and also Shudder Network on Ethereum, basically trying to build these things into the core protocol to essentially limit the malicious MEV. But so why am I talking about all of this? I guess I'm kind of bringing it back a little bit to staking, is you have these constituents of how the staking rewards that you earn if you stake actually come into existence, right? So there's basically like three main factors. There's the token issuance, so basically newly minted tokens. There is the gas fee, so basically paying for the computation and the priority of transactions. And there is now also MEV, which kind of presents a third new way for networks or also like validators to get revenues. It has in the past been assumed that kind of gas fees would make the token model sustainable, because obviously like issuing new tokens is not like super sustainable in the long run. It's something that you do to bootstrap your network more or less. It also has kind of tax implications, because stakers might be taxed on their income, which is also maybe not desirable. And the problem with gas fees is that if you have high gas fees on your network, it actually kind of generates like a bad user experience, right? Like many people that try to use Ethereum in the past have like not been able to do it and had to switch to other networks because the transaction fee is just very high and makes it like unfeasible if you don't hold a large amount of money. So now we have MEV as like a potential solution to that. That's kind of the topic of my talk that I want to like explore a little bit. How is it working currently? I'll get into some data after this. And the problem with MEV that it can be extractive, like we mentioned. So now just kind of like looking at the staking economy currently. So we have on the left side kind of what is currently staked, so total staked value, meaning what are people actually putting up as collateral across all proof-of-stake networks, which is around 109 billion currently. Mirko already talked about the proof-of-stake market cap, which is basically all tokens. Here it's only the stake tokens. And we have liquid staking, which is kind of a way to aggregate staking and kind of mix DeFi and staking together, being like 10% of that 109 billion. Now, on the other hand, we have these kind of rewards that the system generates that are paid out for the security budget of the network. like the staking rewards, which basically come from these other areas. So I have this data is from staking rewards, the token issuance, and then we have like some estimates about how big MEV is from different sources. MEV is very volatile. It depends on bigger hacks, on like bridge exploits, on how much trading there is. So this moves a lot, and gas fees obviously too. So in the end, these things can make up the staking rewards. Maybe what's worth noting is that some of the gas fees, especially like in this example, gas fees are actually all on Ethereum and some Binance Smart Chain, which actually doesn't have token issuance. And most of the other networks are very focused on token issuance still, because again, this is like a bootstrapping mechanism where you try to kind of grow the usage and later make it sustainable. We'll look a bit into that, how it looks in practice. And also, I think MEV, this is like a total estimate, but obviously MEV is kind of spread between different parties, as I showed on the earlier slides. So these 600 million are basically spread across all these potential users or like participants in the MEV ecosystem, let's say. Maybe like some more data on how does it actually look on some live networks where maybe some of you are staking. So again, we have these three parts that the APR is comprised of. So this slide kind of shows the three different networks, probably the most MEV relevant ones. So there's Ethereum staking, where you have a roughly 8% APR if you leverage MEV, where we actually have the best data. So you can see that like still on Ethereum, like 50% of the kind of yield is made up of tokens that are newly minted. So ETH that comes into circulation, and then 34 come from the gas fees. The gas fees on Ethereum actually half burned and half paid to the validators. So like some of the gas fees actually offset some of the issuance, which we'll also look at in a second. And then there's the final portion of MEV, which is currently around 12% on Ethereum if you use MEV Boost by Flashbots. And then on the other networks, I basically took some estimates that we did on Solana MEV. The Chorus research team has done a bunch of dashboards and research how big the opportunity is on both Osmosis and Solana, and we basically assume the same reward split that we have on Ethereum. So it's like a 50-50 split between validators and searchers. And if you look at it like that, then you can see on Solana, it's 91% the token issuance, basically 5% for MEV and fees, since Solana is also a pretty low fee network. And on a newer network like Osmosis, the issuance is like a very, very large percentage, almost like basically 100%, 97%, with MEV being a small portion here as well. So yeah, this might be quite interesting to see like how it develops. Obviously, Ethereum being like the most mature and kind of sustainable token economy in a sense. And so I also wanted to like kind of finish it up by looking at the kind of token economics from the perspective of token issuance and kind of general monetary policy, let's say. So here is a chart that just shows the percentage change annualized over this year, like it's current snapshot of how many new tokens are issued on Ethereum, Solana, Osmosis, and then what is burned through fees, and essentially the net supply growth. So you can see that actually currently on Ethereum, more of the tokens are burned than are issued to pay for the proof of stake security. This is also the case because actually Ethereum staking is still like relatively small. It's only 20-30% of the supply, so you don't need that much inflation to pay for the yield, and the fees are still very relevant on Ethereum. So you end up actually with a negative issuance. So basically, what people like to call ultrasound money, like Ethereum is a deflationary token currently, and it's basically the only one in crypto that has this property. And then you can see on Solana, right, the situation is a bit different. It's still a lot the issuance, almost 5.4%. Solana also has a much higher staking ratio, so almost 80% of all Solana or Sol holders stake. So that also requires you to issue more tokens to kind of pay for the yield. And the fee burn is relatively minor. And then Osmosis has really high inflation, because actually on Osmosis you also pay for the LP providers. So the LP providers are also paid through some token incentives and some other parties. So overall, quite far from being like sustainable. But just to compare like different network stages here on my final slide. yeah, I hope this was a good overview for you. You learned a little bit about MEV. We're going to discuss a little bit more in the course of the conference. So we'll have like some panels. I hope you'll enjoy. If you want to learn more about Chorus One, we have a site about MEV. We run infrastructure, so we're a staking provider for different networks. We can also run MEV optimized infrastructure with us. And if you're building in the MEV space or want to research with us, please find us on some of these sites. Thank you so much. Staking Summit, and talk to you soon.